Game on, Aaron. Game on. Hello and welcome. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM. It is 9 o'clock. It is the 20th day of March 2021. The sun is out. The sky is blue. I'm beautiful, and so are you. And apparently, Aaron the Pedantic has posted a I fucked up challenge where DMs across the world are supposed to respond on their greatest gaming mistake. But of course, game masters never make mistakes. A wizard is never late or early. He is always where he's supposed to be. A game master never makes mistakes because everything happens exactly the way we planned it behind the screen, even if you think it was a mistake. That said, there have been, of course, times when I misread the room or was not given the complete information, or things simply happened where I was like, and of course, there's been rules I didn't know and I had to look up, or players used things on me that I wasn't prepared for. But is that really making a mistake? I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is a constantly influx series of, back and forth between the game master and the players. So you never can really truly plan for everything the players do. You can only, have outlines and stuff and hope and pray, but even if you try your best to railroad them and get them to follow the script exactly the way it's written, sometimes a player will just do something, or sometimes something will happen, or sometimes you'll misread the room. So yeah, biggest mistakes, I didn't know, how things were going to end, and like choices of running something without reading the room, especially with 5th edition. Not really things. But I think my biggest not reading the room, my biggest mistakes. The first that comes to mind is, of course, the girl who started crying, which was I did not read the room. And although everybody else felt that this was sort of ridiculous, maybe hindsight being 2020, I should have read the room a little bit better and tried to, realize that so far this girl's been sort of extreme, so she's probably maybe going to be extreme again. So I was running my annual Thanksgiving adventure, Night of the Dire Turkey, an adventure I have run almost every Thanksgiving for the past 20 years, except, of course, for this year because of COVID, where basically the premise is very simple. A giant kaiju turkey manifests and attacks, and the players have the evening to deal with it through various different means depending upon the theme. We've done it in outer space, we've done modern day, we've done past, we've done sort of a sewer squad. We did a sort of one that was sort of a parody of the Suicide Squad, with them being thrown out of a blimp by Amanda Waller, who was really just a drow elf. And whatever. So it's always been a tongue-in-cheek Thanksgiving one-shot. Sometimes I'd give them pre-generated characters. Sometimes I would say, this is a one-shot, so make a character specifically for this. Sometimes it would be no matter what happens in this, it doesn't really count because it's the Thanksgiving, you're fighting a giant kaiju turkey. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's just the fact that, people do Halloween adventures and Christmas adventures, but I never saw a Thanksgiving-themed adventure, so I was going to do a giant kaiju turkey called Night of the Dire Turkey, which sort of a homage to, classic black and white Night of the Living Dead Turnip kind of, So I'm running this scenario like I have, and there's this girl at the table, and, she's been there 2 or 3 games, and she's always been sort of really kind of sketchy, extreme. We didn't really know what her story was, if she was, maybe unstable, on drugs, just, very wound too tight, maybe a little too emotionally young. But anyways, it's a tongue-in-cheek scenario, and they're fighting the giant turkey, and, they're planning, okay, how are we going to deal with this giant turkey, and sort of thinking along the lines of the theme, and she suddenly starts crying. And the reason why she starts crying and then she gets up and just leaves is because she didn't want to see the turkey get hurt, because she loves all animals. Now, none of us knew this. It's not like she's, And all the previous adventures she'd been in, she was perfectly fine with the party killing whatever monster was, plaguing them. But for something about the turkey, and I don't know, maybe she grew up on the farm, maybe she had a pet turkey, maybe she was just having a bad day, maybe, she thought we were somehow making fun of her, no cruelty to animal vegetarian beliefs. I don't know, because she didn't say anything, triggering. It was just like one of those ableism stories where I, the DM, should have warned everybody ahead of time, hey, you're going to be fighting a giant turkey. Does anybody have a problem with that? But it's kind of in the title. Literally, it's Night of the Giant Turkey, where I tell everybody, okay, next week we're doing Night of the Dire Turkey. You're going to be fighting a giant kaiju turkey. So she could have said. But anyways, I guess that's a big mistake because I didn't read the room. And maybe I should have seen that she's sort of always been, a little screw too loose, the previous examples. But, just to get up and start crying because she didn't want to see the turkey get hurt. It's a very extreme response. None of us really knew what to do. Obviously, the game sort of ended there, and we're all kind of like, but it's a game. It's not a real turkey. You do understand that it's a giant kaiju robot turkey, and not sure why you're upset, because you weren't upset when they beat up the monsters in the previous episode, but whatever. Yeah. So that was one mistake of just not reading the room. And of course, I tried to talk to her and be very political and, said, this is what happens in a game. And this is the way I run. It wasn't meant to offend anybody. It was all tongue in cheek. It was all humor. It does literally state it's in the scenario, Night of the Dire Turkey, you're going to be fighting a dire turkey. If this was something that was going to upset you, if D&D upsets you, if the way I run D&D upsets you, you need to let people know. So, because I can't fix what if I don't know what's broken. Maybe my game isn't for you. Maybe you need to find a game that is more attuned to your issue. And of course, my telling her maybe my game isn't for her got her all upset, and she started yelling and screaming and crying and calling me names and saying that, I was sexist and the store was, and then it got onto a whole other thing and nobody ever saw her again. And then she apparently was going around town telling people she was a witch and she was casting a spell on the store. So obviously there was some mental health issues involved that none of us were aware of. But yeah, I guess that was one of my biggest mistakes. I don't know. It's not a mistake though. It's just, really it's more on her. Could I have said yes again? Let's just remind everybody this scenario, you're going to be fighting a giant turkey. Does anybody have a problem with that? Maybe. Could she have told us that, she's an animal lover? She doesn't believe. And, then, yeah, she should have said something about this. She shouldn't be playing in a game where you regularly beat up on monsters and animals and wolves and shit if that's something that upsets her. But whatever. So that's probably one of my biggest mistakes. And then there's another one. Most of them just deal with the fact that a lot of the players are sort of, maybe we're a little bit more mentally unstable than I was aware of, or maybe just didn't communicate as well with me as they should have. And I always try my best to communicate, and I always try and give them this, the benefit of the doubt. And then I always say, look, I get my style isn't for everyone. If you're unhappy with the character, with the game, with the way this universe works, that's fine. Let's find you the game that will make you happy. But, I say one thing, people hear something else, and then they go and tell people something else. And then I get this reputation of being a toxic gatekeeper because I told some kid, look, dude, you're obviously not having a good time. Let's help you find what is going to have you a good time instead of you sitting here every game pouting and crying because your character isn't doing what you think it's going to do or whatever. I get my game style is not for everybody. I'm for those who appreciate it, they appreciate it. For the rest who don't get it, that's fine that you don't get it. But, there are other game masters, other stories you can tell. So if my story doesn't work for you, I'm happy to help you find a story that does work for you because it keeps money flowing through the game stores here in Ventura. I'm not attacking you, but all those times the history seems to show that what I say, what people hear, and then when they tell somebody else tend to be three different things. So I guess that's probably one of my greatest mistakes. I mean, all of my mistakes with players are sort of similar stories of maybe me not reading the room, maybe me not communicating, maybe I was dealing with somebody who was a little bit more mentally unstable than I thought, and they didn't communicate. Maybe, I don't know, running at a game store, there's always that risk. You don't know who the person's going to be. And I can be a jerk, especially when I'm very protective of my game. I'm very protective of the store that I was running the game at. I'm very, aware that there are other people in the store, especially kids. If I'm running a game at 6 o'clock where I have to think about, we have to think about things like language and the way we behave because there's kids here in the store playing Pokemon and Magic, and we're sitting in the corner playing D&D, and things I have to think about is like, you're using a lot of bad words, dude. You got to remember there's kids here, so we got to sort of, or you're acting a little over the top and some of the parents are complaining, and you got to, all those things were things I had to think about. And maybe my big mistake was not communicating well enough, maybe not listening well enough. Maybe I should have asked more questions. Maybe I should have had people write down stuff. I don't know. I never really felt like I was doing anything wrong, but obviously where I live, there's a lot of people who have, because there's so many homeless communities and so many mental health communities, and we know that Ventura is one of the towns where they just dump people with mental health issues on the street. So obviously a lot of the people I played with over the years maybe had mental health issues that I wasn't aware of, or maybe were just not emotionally prepared for D&D, and maybe there's things I could have done differently. I don't know, because communication amongst players and GMs still to this day is as difficult as herding cats. So yes, I wish people had said more things to me. I wish maybe I'd communicated better. I wish somebody maybe else was telling me, blah, blah, blah. Who knows? But, I mean, I think the best, that's definitely an example. The other one was a guy who once got up, this is my favorite, in the middle of a game without any reason and said, it was obvious he wasn't having a good time, and, his character wasn't doing as much mega damage as he thought it was going to be. So he gets up in the middle of the game and says, I have to go. My iguana just knocked over my lava lamp and set my puppy on fire, and then left. We don't know how he knew that, because it wasn't like his phone rang. He just got up, said, I have to go. My lizard knocked over my lava lamp and set my puppy on fire, and left. And we never saw him again. And to this day, it's one of the best stories of just, what the So there you go. My biggest mistake, my biggest screw up as a DM is maybe not asking enough questions, maybe not making myself clear, maybe being a little too egotistical, a little too protective of my game and the store. Maybe I'm a little too judgmental. I don't know. I don't know. We do know I'm an asshole. That much is clear. Anyways, there you go, Aaron, the pedantic. There is my response to your challenge of what is my biggest screw up. I hope you appreciate it. Till next time, remember, my iguana has knocked over my lava lamp and set my puppy on fire, so get off my land.